Violet was 17 years old and had been recruited to the retreat after Percival and the others had made telepathic contact with her some 3 years since. She had had a rough childhood in which her natural aptitude for thievery had been severely tested. Certainly born illegitimate, and very likely the product of incest, her unusual appearance had made her repulsive even to those of her immediate family. For her, as for many others, the retreat had been a welcome sanctuary. Her familiarity with certain of London's less exemplary neighbourhoods and communities had been what had made Percival choose her as his companion on his return to the city. Between them, Emily and Violet acquainted me with the episode leading to the latter's arrest at St. Pancras, and with what had occurred thereafter. The girl had been taken by the sinister policemen, who she was quite convinced were not policemen, to an ordinary-looking townhouse, which was most certainly not a police station, and incarcerated in a cell. This room appeared to have been recently adapted to its current purpose. A sturdy metal plate had been let into the wall, and to this Violet was handcuffed. Having made sure of Violet's immobility, the policemen exchanged their uniforms for functional boiler suits, retaining the electronic headpieces which Emily had observed beneath their helmets. As Emily had realized at the railway station, Violet's peculiar talents included a kind of hypnotic suggestion at a distance, akin but not identical to Percival's telepathy. By playing on the suggestibility of the human mind, Violet was capable of persuading an observer not to notice her, thus rendering herself effectively invisible, even when committing a public crime. She had been able to exert this power evenly across a large and ever-changing crowd, and it had been sporadically effective even upon Emily, who had considerable experience of mental influences, and who, besides, had had her attention by then fully focused on her quarry. If this same gift had failed to affect the false policeman, then these oral contrivances, which Violet now speculated acted as an artificial aid to concentration, were undoubtedly responsible. The treatment which Violet had received in the townhouse had been very brutal, although it was clear to her that the men had been instructed not to kill or maim her. She harboured no illusions, however, that this arrangement would persist indefinitely. Her captors had been seeking information about the location of the retreat, and secondarily, about the current whereabouts of Percival, whom they knew by name. Violet was contemptuous of their efforts to persuade her to talk. A mind like hers, she said, was hardly going to give its friends away out of sheer terror, merely because some human animals were making sure her body hurt. Whether she would have remained so sanguine after a longer time in captivity, I cannot tell. In any case, Violet set about arranging an escape at her earliest convenience. Her first act, once left alone, was to attempt to communicate telepathically with Percival. But she found that young man beset by difficulties of his own. This had been the afternoon before his nocturnal visit to my house, and I would soon learn that he and that night's other intruder had had an earlier encounter around this time. She turned instead to a group mind of the supernormals at the retreat, which was large enough and diffuse enough to communicate in the aggregate, even at so distant a remove. The supernormals' understanding of their own capabilities had developed enormously since that time when Percival had carried out his own risky abscondment from military custody. Working as a single entity, with Violet's mind as its focal point, the community was able to locate in the vicinity of the house a middle-aged priest